Shavua Tov, everybody. Tonight we are going to learn a little bit more from the book Kedushat Levi. This is the book from Levi Yitzchak Berdichev. Levi Yitzchak from Berdichev is how that is translated too. So the text we're going to learn about tonight is his one of his many comments on this past Shabbat's Torah portion, Beha'alotecha. So let me show you first of all what he's going to be drashing about. In this week's Torah, in this past Shabbat's Torah portion, there's a moment where Moses lifts the ark and says a prayer, and we learn the special prayer that Moses says when he lifts the ark, and the special prayer he says when the ark is put down. And these words are specially bracketed in the Torah in a kind of inexplicable way, in a way that we haven't seen with any other word in the Torah. I'll show them to you now. So if you look here, where this is a picture of what the what it looks like inside of the Torah, and you'll see those two nuns are backwards, bracketing this small 85-letter paragraph. You might notice the words in here, in between the nun brackets. It says, Vayehi bin soa ha'aron, vayomer Moshe, kuma Adonai v'yafutzu oivecha, v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha. So you might recognize that because we say that in the Torah service. And that first line means in Moses' lifting, in when the ark was lifted, Moses would say, "Rise, Adonai, and disperse your enemies." And then the second part of the sentence says, "Uvnucho yomar shuva Adonai rivavot alfei Yisrael." And when the ark was put down, Moses would say, "Return, Adonai, the multitudes of Israel." And so the question Levi Yitzchak asks, and the question commentators for generations have asked, is why these backwards nuns? There's no clear reason. Remember, the way that you have to, not, you of course, but a scribe, if you are a scribe, amazing, but the way that, a professional sofer, a Torah scribe writes a Torah, is they have a Sefer Torah rolled out in front of them to the section that they're writing, and they copy each word. Even if they memorize the Torah, they have to copy each and every word. And so there are irregularities in the Torah that we've been copying down since time, since our religion started, at least since we've been handing down the Torah. And there's, strange things in our Torah. In Parshat Pinchas, there's a Vav that is cut in half. You have the top part and the bottom part. In Vayikra, you have a tiny aleph right in the beginning of the Parsha. In the middle of Leviticus, there's a large Vav in the middle of the word Gachon. And here, there's these backwards nuns. And there's no clear explanation on why we have these nuns. We have generations of commentary, and what Levi Yitzchak is going to give us is his Hasidic take on why we have these backwards nuns and the significance of them showing up here in the Torah portion. Why do we have these nuns around these words in particular? Okay, let's jump into it. Vayhi bin soa ha'aron. And it was in the lifting of the ark. Nun hafucha. The nun is backwards. We know that. Ki hanun mora al yir'ah. Because nun teaches about fear and awe. Let's hold that for a second. We can ask later why Nun is a letter representing awe, reverence, or fear, for, I think, lack of a better word, but awe and reverence toward God. Ulchach hu kafuf. And for this reason, it is bent. Ulkach kol ha'otiot hovchim panehem. And for this very reason, every single letter turns its face. Ki kol echad bosh mil histakel al chavero. Because each letter is embarrassed to look at its friend. So, he starts by saying two things. First of all, that every letter represents humility, in that if you write out the Aleph Bet, every single letter is turning away from its fellow. It does not want to be seen. It wants to be secretive, in their in what they represent. They embody humility. But none do it like the Nun. The Nun embodies humility, but also has within it a sense of reverence and maybe fear even. And why? Because the Nun, he says, is bent. And you can kind of imagine it like it's somebody who's bowing. In the Amidah, for instance, there's one time when we bow just at our waist. When we say the words, Modim anachnu lach, we are grateful before you, Adonai. And then we have a list of things for which we are grateful for. This is a prayer that comes at the end of the Amidah. And when we say the words, Modim anachnu lach, we are grateful before you, we bend at the waist, and we are kafuf, we are bent. And when we do that, we make the shape of the Nun. We have our torso bending forward, we have our legs straight, and we have our feet out, making a Nun shape. So in that sense, he says, the Nun, by dint of its shape, reminds us of this feeling of fear and reverence that, when we're thanking God in that moment, and when we bow at any point in our service, it is an expression of humility unlike any other moment in our service. And so in that sense, the Nun represents fear and awe in addition to humility. We'll continue in the text. Ve'haklal hu ki ha'adam tzarich lihiyot sanua birat Elohim. And the general principle here that we learn from all of these letters is that one needs to be humble in reverence for God. Okay, let's talk for a second about reverence and fear. I use the word reverence because people are very turned off from fear of God. But I want to bring us back to last week's Parsha, where when the Levites received instructions on carrying out all of the materials from the Mishkan, whenever the Israelites journey in the desert, the priests, the Kohanim, have to first cover all of the Mishkan materials. They have to cover the menorah, they have to cover the shober, they have to cover the ark. Because if any of the Levites touch these things, if anybody touches these things, they die. Because their body and their soul can't handle the level of holiness that's inherent in any of those objects. It's like if we imagine God's holiness as the raw electricity that comes out of a nuclear power plant. And that through the Sefirot, that energy through transformer becomes concentrated and diminished until that electricity becomes usable and accessible to turn on a light bulb. Now, if we were to try to plug that light bulb straight into a nuclear power plant, it would explode. By the way, thank you, Rabbi Adam Greenwald, for that metaphor. Here, the idea of God and fear is real in the Torah. People, one is, completely in awe in approaching God because they know there's a level of danger there that if they get too close, they die. For us, that feeling of danger, of awe and reverence, of getting close to God and wondering how that holiness is going to affect us, that's a feeling that we can tap into when we pray. And here, that nun is meant to symbolize not only that feeling of, not only being humble, but being humble in recognizing that immense power, the immense holiness of God. He says, so the general principle from all these letters is that one needs to be humble in their revering God. As it says in Tana Debei Eliyahu Rava, as it says in Eliyahu Rava, Leolam Yehei Adam. I'm going to read that. We actually say this verse that he's referring to in our morning services. He says, as it says in Eliyahu Rava, Leolam Yehei Adam Yirei Shamayim Baseter Uvagalui. A person should always revere God in secret and in public. Uvagalui. He is secretly and also in a way where people can see it. It's translated here, we should always revere God in private as in public, but we'll see that Levi Yitzchak is reading it as saying one should always fear God in secret and one should always fear God when the time is right, bagalui, in a way where the whole world can see it. Aval, כשהאדם רוצה להעלות ניצוצות, צריך לגלות היראה. However, when a person wishes to raise sparks, one needs to reveal fear or reverence. What do we mean by raise sparks? In Lurianic Kabbalah, we have this idea that when God came into the world, God came through vessels which shattered and created the world around us, and everything in this world has the ability to have sparks of light, sparks of godliness pulled from it. When you hold an apple or any food to eat and you say a blessing over it wholeheartedly, that apple is no longer just a piece of food. That apple, you've now pulled out a divine spark from this apple. And that is, in a major sense, the purpose of the Jew in Lurianic Kabbalah is we are the spark pullers. We are the light bringers, the one whom from normal things pull out godliness. And he says, in order to do that, you have to reveal this reverence. Uvezeh ya'aleh hanitzotz gam ken liroet Hashem. And in this, one raises that spark to fear God. So the sparks themselves have a personality, and when you reveal your own reverence for God, when you say that blessing over an apple, recognizing the immense power. I'm going to just turn on these other lights there. The immense power and holiness of God. Now you've truly brought out that spark of holiness, from that piece of food, because that spark also shares with you that feeling of reverence. V'hine, halichot Yisrael b'midbar, haya laha'alot nitzotzot, hutzrechu az legalot hayira lako. And behold, all of the walking the Israelites did in the desert was in order to raise sparks. However, it was yet necessary to reveal fear and awe to everything. So he's saying, why did the Israelites have to go in the desert and walk for 40 years? He says the purpose was to raise sparks. Everywhere they went, they brought out light and godliness from the space around them. The wilderness, which had been bereft of life, is now full not only of life, but of godliness because of the walking of the Israelites. However, he says, in order to do that, it was necessary to reveal yirah. Let's call it yirah, because it's hard to translate it if it's fear, if it's reverence. So we'll just call it yirah. Yirah had to be revealed in order for these sparks to be lifted. Bichdi she'al yedei zeh yiru hanitzotzot gam ken et Hashem. Because on account of revealing that yirah, the sparks themselves would come also to revere God. V'zehu, and this is the explanation. Bin soa ha'aron. This is the explanation of when the ark was lifted. Here, we'll pull this up again so you can see it. This is the explanation of bin soa ha'aron, of when the ark was lifted. Nosea sheha'aron nosea im Yisrael b'midbar laha'alot nitzotzot. That the ark itself was lifted with Israel in the desert in order to raise nitzotzot. So why is it that the ark was specifically lifted? Why is that the verb chosen here in the Torah? Because we are lifting, we're raising sparks. And so when we lift up the ark, so too we are lifting those divine sparks all around the region that the Israelites are dwelling in. And it wasn't just the lifting. When it was lifted, it was visible. People could see the ark. It was covered, of course, but the immense power of seeing the ark lifted, raised, with that beautiful cover of the cherubim on top of it, and marching in the middle of the camp, when people would see that, that was them witnessing God's holiness. How would you have felt to lay eyes on the Ark of the Covenant? What does it feel like to look, knowing that inside there are the tablets that Moses hewed, that said the Ten Commandments, are the tablets that Moses shattered that had God's writing on it? How would it feel to know that because of that ark, God dwells with us in the camp? When they saw it, their hearts were lifted in a feeling of deep reverence, deep fear, deep yirah for God. So too, because they felt that, they were able to raise up all of the sparks of holiness around them. V'zehu haremez banun, and this is the hint of the nun. Remember, back to our backwards nuns. This is the hint of the nun. Why? The reason the nun is backwards. Shemora al yirah, because it symbolizes yirah. Hofech panav legalot hayirah bichdei laha'alot hanitzotzot, and its face is turned, revealing yirah in order to raise sparks. So here it teaches us that the nun, which is usually facing the other way, in humility and in yirah, in fear and reverence, has now turned its face outwards, revealing the yirah it feels, the yirah it represents, to teach us that in order to raise sparks like the Israelites were doing in the wilderness, we too must reveal that level of yirah. And we do that in our blessings. We do that with prayer. And to me, I think Levi Yitzhak Miberdichev is, in some way justifying his own teaching. He, we can imagine, like any tzaddik, really strives to be humble. And so you have the question, how could such a humble person, write a book? And by the way, this is volume 1 of 2. And a lot of tzaddikim didn't actually write their books. They gave, teachings, and their students copied it down, but they allowed it to be published. And you might ask, why would a tzaddik, somebody so humble, want all their words, published? And this is his answer. He says, because sometimes, actually I would even go further, because it is necessary to reveal humility and to reveal reverence for God and true fear and longing in order to raise sparks in the world around us and in others. So with that, I'll say Shavua Tov for this week. I look forward to more Hasidut in the coming weeks. Wishing you a week of real deep connection with God, connection with each other, connection with yourself.